Hi everyone, welcome to Zalogamoto. Today we are breaking new ground and taking a look at our first Sega CD game, Sewer Shark. Sewer Shark was revolutionary when it came out, at least to my 13-year-old self. I first played it on a friend's Sega CD, whose dad was all about the multimedia revolution that was in progress. And I must say, even though it technically wasn't first, as a TurboGrafx CD was, and it wasn't a massive success, the Sega CD changed how video games were perceived, made, and brought full-motion video to the masses. The Model 1 Sega CD, which is what my friend had, came with several pack-in discs. One was a disc that featured Golden Axe, Columns, Streets of Rage, and Revenge of Shinobi, with slightly improved soundtracks, and another was Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective Volume 1, which was another game that featured full-motion video. Soul Feast, a horizontal shooter with a great CD audio soundtrack, that would later get re-released on cartridges sold Dees instead. Yeah, I don't really get that one either. And a CD audio and CDG compilation disc. I'm not exactly sure how my friend ended up with Sewer Shark as well, whether there was a promotion where they got it free with the Sega CD, or if his dad just thought it looked cool and picked it up as well. But it should be pointed out that the game was popular enough that it would later be the pack-in game with the Model 2 Sega CD, which is what the majority of the copies of the game out in the wild are. But this is not that. This is the original release of the game in long box with manual, and I've got to say, this was a bit hard to find. So, let's take a look. As you can see, this is one of the original releases for the Sega CD, which means they hadn't created the long jewel box yet. So instead, we have this cardboard box, which, if you look at on the inside, the box is pretty intact. I'll go and open this up here and show you real quick. We'll take out the manual and the CD. And there's a, you can barely see it, there's a little cut there that holds the smaller CD jewel case in place. So that means, if that's still there so the CD doesn't slide around, your box is still in relatively good shape. If you... Just a quick note about the actual disc here. So you've got the original release if it looks like this. There's a ton, and I do mean a ton, of CDs out there of Sewer Shark that it's just, the title, and it's just like a light blue background. That means it's one of the pack-in discs that came with the Sega CD Model 2. So if you're really looking to collect and get the original version, if you got this, but you got a blue disc, it's not right. Like I said, the box isn't in perfect condition. You can see it looks a little compressed here on the sides, like maybe somebody accidentally stepped on it or put something on it. But for the most part, it's intact. It's in pretty good shape. And then the manual is in excellent shape. I'll try to express this out so you can see it. Not a whole lot of content here, but hey, as you can see here, I've still got the original warranty card. If I wanted to mail to an address at Sony Image Shop, so I'm sure it doesn't exist anymore. Manual's all in black and white, which, it kind of sucks. But, again, there's just not a whole lot in here, but it does provide a good description of how to play the game. And it does have, let's see here, I'll show you. This little section here. And this is what I miss about modern games not having manuals. These two pages here really set the tone for the game. You've got a little letter here, like an email from your boss, and then here it kind of sets up, a little bit of the story about, what you're doing and describing the vehicle and that sort of thing. And, it's all well and good to have built-in tutorials to games nowadays, but if you really want to, set up the game well, you need this kind of thing in the manual. So, anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the game now. As said before, Sewer Shark was originally released for the Sega CD in October of 1992, and was a launch title for the system. The game takes place in a dystopian future, where humanity by and large has to live below the surface of the Earth. And as a result, the sewers have become critically important to keep clean and clear of critters. You are a rookie pilot of the Whole Hog, a customized sewer shark vehicle designed to rocket through the sewers and take out any vermin that might need to be exterminated. You share the whole hog with your co-pilot, Ghost, who will give you status updates in video segments and let you know how good or bad you're doing, or call out recharge stations and the need to discharge excess hydrogen before you blow up. Your boss, Stenchler, aka the only actor you'll probably recognize in the game, Robert Costanzo, who lives in Solar City, the one place on the surface of the Earth that's still safe, appears from time to time in the beginning of the game between segments with Ghost to encourage or taunt you depending on your performance. And actually that's the first pretty cool thing I'll bring up regarding the game. Being that the game is full motion video based, the game has the option of showing you alternate takes of scenes, depending on how well you're playing. Play well, and Ghost and Stenchler will give you mild praise, but play poorly and Stenchler will threaten your job while Ghost rips you a new one. Without spoiling too much, the game plays out like a B-movie, and let's just say about a third of the way through the game, the plot takes a decided turn, and you'll end up having to save Ghost's girlfriend Falco, who's investigating strange happenings in the quarantine sector 19. The acting is actually not bad. I've certainly heard much worse in a video game. The entire game is short and pretty repetitive. If you're good, you can probably beat the game in a few hours. But in this case, I think it kind of works. While there's not really a whole lot of replay value here, unless you want to try to view all the different video segments, the game is, dare I say, fun. In fact, of the first 9 games we looked at here on Xylogamoto, I dare say that I had more fun playing Sewer Shark than any other game so far. Even Phantasy Star, which I gave a 4-star rating to, wasn't necessarily fun at times, and like most RPGs, became a bit of a chore in places. So, Sewer Shark has that going for it, which is nice. Sound in the game is solid, and what music there is well executed. The audio that accompanies the video segments is clear, and the comms dialogue when you're piloting the whole hog sounds different than the video segments, like they did put it through some sort of filter to make it seem like a radio broadcast. The sound effects are good, and support the gameplay, with the creatures either crying or exploding when shot, or attacking the ship if you're not such a good shot. By modern standards, the video segments are a bit hard to watch. The video is fairly low res, and the Genesis was never known for being able to display a lot of colors on the screen at one time. It's a far cry from today's 4K HDR televisions. But, if you play this on a modern TV with a FrameMeister, or emulated via PC, it's viewable, and considering it all fits on a single CD and is being displayed at 320 by 224 resolution, it's actually a pretty great achievement for 1992. I was actually impressed it looked as good as it did. Some of the segments shot from Solar City appear a bit washed out due to the brightness of the screen, but that's a minor complaint. The game itself is pretty simple. It's a rail shooter at its core. If you're not clear on that term, it basically means that your craft is going down a predetermined path, i.e. on a rail, and all you really control is where your target reticule is pointing at on the screen. You can hold the button to shoot to auto-fire the chain guns on the whole hog, but that uses up energy, which towards the end of the game will be the literal difference between life or death. You may want to practice tapping the A button instead of holding to shoot to conserve energy on the weaker enemies at the beginning of the game, and save rapid fire for later in the game when you absolutely need to make sure you're taking out enemies. You can recharge energy in the whole hog as you go through the game by hitting various recharge stations that will require you to pay close attention to the top of the screen when you're progressing through the sewer, and braking left or right quickly when you see which side is lit up with red or green. If you go the wrong way, you won't die, but you will miss out on the energy the recharge station would have provided. However, this brings us to the slight exception to the standard rail shooter gameplay. As you pilot through the tunnels, there will be various turnoffs available to take, up, down, left, and right. How do you know which way to go to make it through the tunnels? Well, you have a robot on your side named Catfish that will call out the turns in groups of 3. And it's up to you to make those turns properly by hitting the B button and pressing the proper direction on the D-pad. Miss a turn early on, and Catfish will probably be able to help you get back on track, but later on a missed turn is certain death, so you have to stay sharp and pay attention to not only what you're shooting at, but where you're going. There's one last minor gameplay element related to a hydrogen meter that goes across the screen. Further into the sewers, the hydrogen levels will get dangerously high, and anyone that's ever seen what happens when you get a match near hydrogen knows how bad that is. You have flares that can be shot off with the C button.
You will only do this a few times as you progress through the game, and you can only do it after Ghost tells you to, but you have to be quick or else you'll find yourself at an unfortunate game over fairly quickly. And that's all there really is to gameplay. One really nice feature that the game has, unlike a lot of its 16-bit brethren, is that it will allow you to continue from the last checkpoint you made it to, which is really nice, because otherwise you'd probably be having to start over completely from the beginning. The game moves fast due to all the video segments, and there's not really many points to stop and catch your breath, or have manual save game positions or passwords. And the first few times you get towards the end, you will die, just due to not being ready for what is about to be thrown at you. So this is a great feature. Granted, it probably shortens the amount of time to beat the game considerably, but I don't think anyone's really relishing the idea of playing through the easier segments at the beginning of the game time after time, just to have a shot at the end. All in all, I'm going to give Sewer Shark a 4. Yes, it's short, and yes, it's not much to look at 27 years later. But for what they achieved in 1992, combined with the checkpoint save system, the silly B-movie tongue-in-cheek humor, and the amount of fun the game is, I think it's well worth the rating. I know this review is kind of on the short side, but there's just not much else to say, except if you ever wanted to get revenge on that annoying parking cop from Die Hard 2, this is the game for you.
Okay, there we have it. Our first Sega CD reviews in the books. Frankly, I'm just happy to have a functional Sega CD and discs in 2019. It'll be nice to play a lot of these games, because there was very few games in the Sega CD library that I played the first time around, unless it was something that appeared on a home computer as well. I actually may have screwed myself, because I got a feeling this game is probably one of the high points of the Sega CD, and it might be largely downhill from here. But it'll still be a nice experience regardless. Well, maybe not to make your own video games, which I might lump in all in one review. But that's getting ahead of ourselves, as I don't own any of those yet. Tune in next time when we take a look at a game based off of a pretty solid action movie license. Now, is the game solid as well? I'll give you a hint. I've been playing it for a few days now and I still can't get past the first level. Yeah. And remember, whatever you're playing, have fun and be excellent to each other. Later.